Good morning. On page 456 of The Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes wrote, "We must return the way we came, as little children, who know that life is good and to be trusted. We are to approach our problems as though they were not. Approaching them in this manner, they will vanish." Please look at the screen and say with faith the affirmation with me. I know that my purposes are animated and inspired by the Spirit within me. With wisdom and right action, I now successfully bridge the gap between the idea and its reality with ease and grace. And so it is.
So that quote, I'm sure, gave you some insight into what today is all about. So this entire month has been a journey in bridging the gap between idea, our dreams, our aspirations, our visions, and the manifestation of them. And what I continue to remind myself and all of us is that it is not so much about realizing the dream, although that is awesome and we love it. It's who we become in the process. More of the divine nature that we are in truth, revealing more and more of that, because we know that as we approach our dreams, that we change, that we actually must change in order to become in alignment with them. And that means revealing more of the love, the peace, the joy, the wisdom, the intelligence of the divine that's already within us. Remember, we're whole, perfect, and complete. It's within us. But it's the belief structure that we've piled on over the years through conditioning, through all the things that have happened to us that get in the way. So the journey is really about unveiling, raising the veil between ourselves and the divine nature of who we are, one with all that is. So that song was just so perfect for today, because we are the ones that raise the veil and the veil meaning the false beliefs, the ideas that somehow we're separate from that one presence. So last week, what I did was I shared with all of you a story from a book called The Alchemist, back from the 1980s. Anybody ever read that book some time ago? Yeah. And so it's a story of a shepherd boy who has this grand, amazing dream that he wants to accomplish. And he reluctantly sets off on the journey. And then at some point, he wants to meet this alchemist who's going to help him continue to bridge the gap between where he is or his vision and where he wants to be. So let me read you a few passages because they're so inspiring. So he's at a point right now where he is not sure whether to continue pursuing his dream or not because it's looking pretty difficult and nearly impossible. So anybody ever feel that way with your dreams? That's, it's like you have it, it's there. I mean, it's in your mind, but it just hasn't shown up, for various reasons. And so as he met the alchemist, he said, "My heart is afraid it will have to suffer." In other words, that it'll have to suffer in the process of realizing this dream. And the alchemist says, "Tell your heart that fear of suffering is worse than the suffering itself. The fear of suffering is worse than the suffering itself, and that no heart has ever suffered when it goes in search of its dreams." Let me say that again. No heart has ever suffered when it goes in search of its dreams. Why? Because every second of the search is an encounter with God and eternity. Why? Because that's who we are. Our lives are encounters with the divine. And Dan and I saw this beautiful movie that that I'm knowing we're going to be able to show sometime in the future here in our spiritual cinema. It was a documentary actually by Deepak Chopra that was on public television, all about consciousness. And the whole concept is that, and this is going to sound familiar for all of us who've been studying spirituality for a lot of years, is that we are the formless consciousness that inhabits the body. Anybody hear that before? and and so when we realize who we are, when we put our focus on that, we realize that the body temple is just a temporary thing on our eternal journey. It's part of the journey, and so then we can get out of the habit of judging it, but simply seeing it as an amazing temple or vehicle that allows us to have this experience and to realize more fully and discover our divinity, our divine nature, which is pure consciousness. So that's why it's always an encounter with God, and God being this more expansive idea of pure awareness, pure consciousness, the presence of love, all of these invisible things that we talk about, we can feel, but they don't have form. There's not a form to them. So it's this invisible nature. So the boy then told his heart, every second of the search is an encounter with God. So he told himself, his heart, that. And then he admitted, when I have been truly searching for my treasure, every day has been luminous. And I've discovered things along the way that I never would have seen had I not had the courage to try things that seemed impossible for a shepherd to achieve. And I love the image of the shepherd, because the shepherd is a very humble being, and it's kind of a symbolism of our humanity. So often in our own humanity, we don't really realize who we are. We think of ourselves, oh, I'm just a mere human. And yet, really, we are so much more than that. So that night, the boy slept deeply, and when he awoke, his heart said, all people who are happy know they have God within them. Okay, know who we are, this formless nature of divinity. And that happiness can be found in a grain of sand, because a grain of sand is a moment of creation. The name of that documentary that Dan and I saw was called You Are the Universe. And so when we realize that everything that we see, hear, feel, touch is a moment of creation, we are living in that expanded, awake, aware state of who we are in truth. So he goes on to say, everyone on earth has so his heart went on to say, everyone on earth has a treasure that awaits him. We, people's hearts, seldom say much about these treasures because people no longer want to search for them. We speak of them only to children. Think of my grandchildren who, they think it, they manifest it. Later, we simply let life proceed in its own direction, is what the heart is still saying. But unfortunately, very few follow the path of their personal legends, in other words, our dreams and visions, and to happiness. Most people see the world as a threatening place, so it becomes a threatening place. It's done unto you as you believe, right? So we, their hearts, speak more softly. We never stop speaking out, but we begin to hope that our words won't be heard. We don't want people to suffer for not following their hearts. What a beautiful message and a reminder of how important it is to follow our hearts, to stay true to the path. So the boy asked his heart to never stop speaking to him and sound an alarm if he wandered too far from his dream, and he would heed its message. Anybody get those alarms in your life? How do they show up? How do those alarms show up for you? Only you can answer that. Donna?
Well, for me, I feel tension in my heart when I'm not doing what I know I would be happy to do, and instead I'm resisting it, and it shows up as tension.
Powerful. Donna's alarm. A tension in the heart. Yeah. We all have them. Physical illness can be a sign. There are all kinds of different ways that can show up for each one of us. So let's just do a quick review of last week, and then we'll jump forward into the tool for today. Because last week I presented 2 spiritual tools for bridging the gap, and the first one was cultivating the open moment. And this is merely a shift from I can't have my dream, and then all the reasons why I can't, to it's possible. It's possible. It's like that little crack, that little opening that says, yes, it's possible. And in our teachings, we say, with God, all things are possible. And the metaphysical way of looking at that is with expanded awareness of who we are in truth, that formless being inhabiting the body that is whose word is creative, whose thought is creative, whose beliefs are creative, and that we can change those beliefs and thoughts. We're in charge of them. We then begin to realize that all things truly are possible. The second tool is listen to our own intuition, which we were just talking about. The intuition being another word for the divine within me, the universal mind speaking through me and as me, or as I also offered last week, the voice that loves us. That's why we can trust it. It loves us and wants the highest and best for us, that particular inner voice. So these tools can take you partially across the bridge, yet you still may feel like you're hanging in the gap, faced with a problem. Can anyone relate to that? Still in the gap, faced with the problem, even though you've been applying, you've been going for it, you've considered the possibility, you're moving forward, you're listening to your intuition, and yet still, because there's maybe an obstacle, what we think is an obstacle or a problem that shows up. So here's the spiritual tool for today. The problem is never the problem. The problem is never the problem. Why? Because there really is no problem. Our minds make it up. It's really an opportunity, or it's part of the journey, it's part of the stimulus to move us forward. And Ernest Holmes again reminds us to be like little children who know that life is good and to be trusted and to approach problems basically as if they don't exist and they vanish. So it's like reframing what we usually call a problem as an opportunity. And there's a great story, another story about a shepherd that illustrates this so beautifully. And many of you will recognize this. You probably heard this 100 times when you were growing up, if you grew up in any of the spiritual traditions that people usually do in this country. And so here's the story. A long time ago, the Israelites and the Philistines were at war. And the battle was long and hard. And so one day, this huge, huge man, giant of a man, stepped out between the two battlefields, the two sides, and he made a proposal. This was his proposition. He said, I will fight any of you Israelites to the death, and whoever wins, your people will become slaves of our people, or vice versa. Whoever wins becomes the ones who are so you know what I'm talking about. so every time he said this, and so dawn every morning and dusk every night, he makes this proposition. And every time he does, the Israelites run for the hills because, all these soldiers, because they don't want to be the ones to have to fight this huge man, because he's huge. And so day after day, they come back, they start the battle, and he keeps making this proposition. So there is a man by the name of Jesse, and he has 4 sons. 3 of them are soldiers that are in the battle. And the youngest is David. And David is asked by his father to go take food to his brothers, because that's basically how they made sure to feed the soldiers, is the families would send food every so often. Now remember, these stories are beautiful teaching stories if you listen for the teachings in them. So David took the food to the front line just about that moment when Goliath was making his proposition. And right after he did, the soldiers ran to the hills and he ran with them. And then when they kind of all got together again, the king offered another proposition. He said, if any soldier who is willing to fight and to win against Goliath and put an end to this war, he says, I'm so tired of this war, let's just get it over with. So he says, here's my proposition. Whoever wins gets all the riches that they want, gets no taxes for you or your family for the rest of your life, and this is one of the best things, you get the hand of the princess, the daughter of the king. And this is King Saul. And so the other soldiers are going, I don't care what he offers. There's just no way, because it means I'm going to die, But David listens to that and he says, that sounds really good. Really, oh my gosh, riches, all the riches I want, and no taxes for me or my family, and the hand of the princess? That sounds really good. So he goes and he tells his brother he's gonna fight Goliath. And his brothers look at him and he said, are you crazy? Are you crazy? Have you seen how big that guy is? And you're just a scrawny little shepherd boy. There's no way. And David just keeps his idea. He just keeps going over in his mind. He goes, wow, all riches and no taxes and the hand of the prince. He's focused on his vision. He stays focused on the vision. And so he talks to the king, lets him know that he's going to do it. And the king says, I want you to put on this armor. And that's not part of David's vision. He has another idea. So he says, nope, I'm not going to wear armor because I want to be fast on my feet. And he remembers how his slingshot and how good he is at the slingshot. So he finds 5 nice smooth stones. They set it up. He goes out, and everybody knows what happened after that. It's history after that. And so what I want to offer here is, this is not about, I don't want you to focus on the violence of it, because I know I can get there, I can go there, and it's like, But it's really about the symbolic meaning or the metaphorical or metaphysical meaning that's behind this. Because Goliath stands for the Goliath of problems or obstacles that we run into. And how is it that we take them out? And we take them out, first of all, by facing them. And you might want to think about your own life. And I was thinking about where he hit him in the third eye. It's kind of like we have to remove the focus on the problem out of the third eye, which is where we focus on things, and instead keep our eye on the vision like David did. What a beautiful little story to remind us of this truth. So, your own dream. You have a dream. Sounds like they're having fun up there. Pursuing their dream.
Sounds like Goliath.
Sounds like what?
Goliath.
Goliath. Okay, so you have a dream, and I just take a moment and allow yourself to focus on a dream that you may have. You've taken the leap of faith, most likely, started walking across the bridge by cultivating the open moment. It's possible. Listening to the voice that loves you, and now faced with the Goliath of a problem. So, what is your habit pattern? Do you have the habit pattern of running for cover like the soldiers did? Or you might want to start a new habit if you do, of instead keeping your focus on the vision. Because remember, what makes the heart suffer most is what?
Fear and suffering.
Fear of suffering and also not pursuing your dream. That's where the suffering comes. So everyone on earth has a treasure that requires us to bridge the gap to experience it. And like David, we can realize that the problem is not the problem. And you think about him, truly was the opportunity for him, because if he hadn't had the opportunity to fight Goliath, he would not have realized his dreams. This was a perfect path to his dreams. So this is our work then. So let me just kind of pull this together now. The other soldiers had the same opportunity as David, didn't they? But according to the alchemist, very few follow the path to their personal legends and to happiness. Most people see the world as a threatening place, and so it becomes threatening. So how about you? Are you willing to see problems as opportunities? A gift that leads to fulfilling the dream. And so today, the two shepherd boys offered us a nice little path that I'm just going to reinforce again one more time. The same message. Stay open to the possibility that your dream is possible. Trust your intuition, the voice that loves you. See the problem as an opportunity to realizing your dream, and stay focused on the dream. For every second that we do so, every second of the journey is an encounter with God, the divine. And so it is. Thank you.